My name's Jack, 37, and I live in a small town just outside Austin, Texas. I grew up on my family's ranch, a sprawling piece of land that's been ours for generations. It's not just a place to hang my hat, it's a legacy. My dad made sure I earned every bit of what I have. Nothing came easy, and nothing was handed to me. By the time I was 12, I was waking up at dawn to feed cattle and mend fences. A man's worth is in his calluses, my dad always said. Now, I've built a solid life. The farm's thriving, the livestock is healthy, and I've got the kind of strength that comes from years of hard labor. At 6 feet 3 inches and 250 pounds of solid muscle, with a foundation laid during high school wrestling, I'm not the kind of man anyone tangles with lightly. I've got 2 boys, Eli, 10, and Lucas, 8, who are already showing they've inherited my grit. My wife, Claire, was the crown jewel of my life, or so I thought. We met at a county fair. She was running a booth for some local boutique, dressed like she'd just stepped out of a country music video, cowgirl boots, a sundress hugging her curves just right, and a smile that could melt steel. I was hooked from the start. One date turned into 2, and before long, she was living on the ranch with me. My mom wasn't thrilled about it. She thought Claire was too much of a city girl, not cut out for ranch life. Maybe Mom saw something I didn't because, for a while, it seemed like Claire was adjusting. We got married, had our boys, and settled into a rhythm. But 8 years in, things shifted. The closeness we once had faded, replaced with polite conversations and the kind of distance you could feel across a room. I chalked it up to the grind, raising kids, running a farm. It takes a toll. Then Claire started dressing differently. Tighter jeans, low-cut tops, makeup done just right even when she wasn't going anywhere. I admit, I enjoyed the change at first. It brought back a spark, or so I thought. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. My father had been diagnosed with cancer and moved closer to the hospital, leaving me with more responsibilities around the ranch. Claire started taking the boys to football practice, telling me they had a new coach. Her tone was just a little too excited, but I didn't think much of it. That was my first mistake. A few weeks later, I decided to surprise the boys at practice. I left the ranch early and pulled up to the field. Eli and Lucas were out there running drills, but Claire was nowhere in sight. I wandered around, figuring she might be in the stands or chatting with other parents. When I couldn't find her, I headed to the restroom before driving back. That's when I heard it. The sounds were unmistakable, moans echoing from a locked stall. My gut twisted. I tried to rationalize it, thinking maybe it was just some teenagers messing around. Then I heard her voice. "Oh, Jeff," harder. "Don't stop." The world stopped spinning. I leaned against the wall, needing it to hold me up. My wife, in the bathroom, screwing the kids' football coach. I stayed frozen, every instinct screaming at me to act, but I didn't. When they finally emerged, laughing and fixing their clothes, I peeked around the corner. There she was, giggling like a schoolgirl, her hand lingering on his chest. "You make me feel alive," she said. Jeff grinned, pulling her in for a sloppy kiss. Neither of them noticed me as they walked out, arm in arm. I clenched my fists, my body a storm of rage and betrayal. But I held back. Acting on impulse would cost me everything. Instead, I went back to the ranch and sat under the old oak tree my dad and I planted years ago. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I let my anger simmer and form into a plan, a brutal, unrelenting plan. The next morning, I went straight to my mom's place. She has a knack for staying calm, no matter what. She took one look at me, handed me a mug of coffee, and said, "Spit it out." So, I did. I told her every detail, the bathroom, the noises, the look on Claire's face afterward. Mom didn't flinch. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair and said, "First thing you do is lock everything down. Money, property, custody of the boys. She doesn't get a damn thing." That night, I began laying the groundwork. I installed cameras around the house and barn, the kind you'd never notice unless you were looking. I put spyware on Claire's phone to track every text, call, and emoji. Within a week, I had more than enough evidence. Claire and Jeff were careless, texting things like, "Can't wait to see you again," and "Sunday at your place." Jack's taking the boys out, right? Sunday was their next rendezvous. On my land. In my house. I kept my cool, took the boys to see my parents, and doubled back to the ranch. Jeff's rusty old truck was already parked, hidden behind a cluster of trees. I went straight to my workshop and got ready. The air on the ranch felt different that morning, thick with tension and resolve. I stood in my workshop, the weight of the past weeks pressing on my chest like a storm ready to break. Reaching for my father's old double-barrel shotgun, I loaded it, not because I intended to use it, but because the unmistakable sound of a shotgun racking is a universal language. You've messed with the wrong man. I logged into the cameras I'd installed, each feed beaming onto my phone like a cruel confirmation of betrayal. There they were, in my bedroom, Claire sprawled on all fours while Jeff played the role of some self-satisfied stud. My jaw clenched, my fingers tightening around the phone as I forced myself to stay calm. Not yet. Instead, I sent a text to Melissa, Jeff's wife. It was brief, sharp, and devastating. Asterisk, thought you'd like to see what your husband's been up to. Asterisk, I attached the live camera feed. Her reply came quickly, searing in its simplicity. Asterisk, he's dead to me. Asterisk. I chuckled to myself. Not just yet, Melissa, but he will be. Outside, I let the dogs out. 6 of them, big, loyal, and as protective as they come. I tossed them Jeff's baseball cap, taken from his truck, and watched as their noses flared, catching the scent. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the pack before they bolted toward the house, barking like the hounds of hell. Claire's scream tore through the air, followed by the clumsy thuds of Jeff scrambling out the front door. Stark naked, clutching his clothes like a shield, he stumbled onto the gravel driveway, his face a mask of panic. He froze when he saw me standing there, the shotgun resting in my hands. You lost? I asked, my voice calm, cold and cutting. His eyes widened, his lips fumbling for words. Listen, man, I can. The sharp clack of the shotgun racking silenced him. He flinched, his breath hitching like a scolded dog. Run, I said. He didn't need to be told twice. Bare feet crunching on gravel, he bolted toward the barn, his clothes flapping in his arms. I opened the barn door, stepping aside to let Titan out. Titan was my prized bull, 1,500 pounds of sheer muscle and fury. Jeff didn't stand a chance. Titan charged, his massive horns striking Jeff in the side and tossing him a good 10 feet into the air. The sickening thud of his landing was almost drowned out by his pained groans. I walked over, grabbing him by the collar and hauling him to his feet. His face was pale, streaked with dirt and sweat, his eyes wild with terror. You think you're a man? I growled, my voice low and venomous. Messing with another man's wife? On his land. Jeff whimpered something about being sorry, but I didn't care. My fists answered for me, one punch after another until he crumpled to the ground like a broken marionette. By the time I was done, he was barely conscious, bloodied, battered, and beaten. I stepped back, breathing hard, and pulled out my phone. Dialing 911, I kept my tone calm, almost casual. There's an intruder on my property, I said. Looks like he had some kind of accident with my bull. You'd better send an ambulance. When the cops and paramedics arrived, I played my part perfectly, the concerned landowner who stumbled upon an unfortunate trespasser. I saw him running around naked, I told the deputy, shaking my head in feigned disbelief. Thought he might be on something. My dogs chased him out of the house, and he must have startled Titan. The bull doesn't take kindly to strangers. Jeff was barely coherent as they loaded him onto the stretcher, his ribs visibly broken, his legs marked with the dog's bites. No one questioned my story. This was Texas, after all. Trespassing accidents weren't exactly rare. The deputy nodded, his expression understanding. You have every right to defend your property, Mr. Carter. We'll take your statement down at the station. I gave him a firm handshake and left, heading straight to town where my lawyer was already waiting. The formalities were a breeze: trespassing, misunderstanding, and so on. No charges were filed. When I returned to the ranch, Claire was sitting on the bed, her makeup streaked with tears. She must have pieced together what had happened. The moment she saw me, she started her act. Jack, I can explain. I raised a hand, cutting her off. From my pocket, I pulled out the divorce papers, already prepared. I dropped them on the bed in front of her. Sign them, I said flatly. Her eyes darted between the papers and me, her lips trembling. Please, Jack. Don't do this. It was a mistake. A mistake. I interrupted, my voice low and sharp. A mistake is spilling coffee. Forgetting to lock the gate. Screwing another man in my house while our kids are at practice? That's a choice. And you made it. Her tears came harder, but I stepped back as she reached for me. You can leave tonight, or you can wait for the court to handle it. Either way, you're done here. Months later, we met in court. Claire's lawyer barely put up a fight. The evidence I had, videos, texts, witness statements, was airtight. When they tried to argue for half of the assets, my lawyer, Mr. Ellison, shut them down with brutal precision. Your Honor, my client owns no property, it's all in his parents' names. His only personal assets are a modest account. We propose $200 in combined alimony and child support, generous under the circumstances. The judge agreed. When the gavel fell, Claire lost it, screaming, "You ruined my life," as she lunged toward me. My mother, always a force of nature, stepped in. She grabbed Claire by the hair and slammed her into a chair. "Sit your ass down," she growled. The deputies intervened, but I just smirked. "Now you know where I get it from," I said. With Claire out of our lives and the boys safe at the ranch, peace finally returned. Jeff's life spiraled, divorced, jobless, and living out of his truck. Meanwhile, I rode into the future on a custom Harley, a reminder that betrayal might sting, but revenge? Revenge is sweet as hell.